June. What is in progress? Nama Om Vishnu Pataya Krishna Pistaya Mukule. Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swanti Namana. Namaste Sarasati Devi Kaulavani Vacharine. Nirvasisha Sunya Vahari. Pashtatar Satarine. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda. Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sari Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Okay, Hare Krishna. So just a little quick recap. Where we began chapter 31 last week. It's called Perfecting Trance. Maharaj has given some of the characteristics of this stage of Samadhi, which is very interesting and inspiring to hear about. First, it's liberated status. Okay? So, although it's described there on page 612, interestingly enough, at the stage of Samadhi, one is not fully liberated. How that is so is we shall read about. We're not fully liberated, but they manifest all the symptoms of one thus liberated. Then Maharaj gives, interestingly, again, some examples of, gave an example of Lord Shiva in his trance of Lord Shankarshan. It was considered to be absorbed in the bliss of Brahmananda. So obviously this is not, a devotee is not absorbed in the bliss of Brahmananda, but their consciousness is completely absorbed in the Lord. That's that one. And the realizations that come from that. Remember that subject, that devotees, because of that close or that intense association with Krishna through Smaran, they're now in touch with Krishna and in touch with these, as such, the Samvit Shakti. So all the truths of Krishna are known or become revealed. So remember we mentioned that. It's interesting because for instance, we have acharyas who are more or less illiterate. Jagannath Das Babaji, isn't it? Mm-hmm. But they knew all the truths, all the siddhanta of Krishna. That's because of their absorption in Krishna. Yeah. So it might be encouraging for us, as though we're perhaps not at the stage of Samadhi, but just by serving Krishna, meditating upon Krishna, and trying our best to hear about the glories of Krishna, we can come to know the truths of Krishna by Krishna's blessings and mercy. Yeah. So that was interesting. So that was second. And the third one, which the third one now is where we're reading from. It's free from the, I'll just read it. Free from bodily identification. I think example, yeah, I think the example, actually we did discuss a little bit about that. Just looking at what we covered. Is so freedom from bodily related illusions. So this is characteristic of, again, the being on the Brahma Buddha stage, being situated in realization of transcendence. I'll just read this paragraph here. Freedom from the demands of the body does not mean that the body ceases to exist. As though Krishna takes charge of his devotee, he does not free a surrendered soul from all traces of karma. That's called prapta karma, when it says that. Okay, so the prapta karma is manifest as the material body. Therefore, both the gross and subtle body, along with the vital air and senses, must continue, okay, under control of divine destiny. However, self-realized practitioner is a master of his body. Okay, it is no longer a surrendered slave of its demands or various manifestations. Okay, so One is in control of the self, one is in control of the senses, spontaneously so, okay? And then we come to another aspect of that which we're carrying on from page 617. Okay, so let's read about that. I think it's about sleep. Everyone likes sleeping? Yes. Everyone needs to sleep? Yes. Yeah, interesting we hear stories. I was just reading just now of the associates of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Raghunath Das Goswami, Raghunath Bhatta, and others who practically went without sleeping. And we have an example of Srila Prabhupada himself. So that's a symptom of having attained this stage of deep absorption of samadhi. Another wonderful evidence of being free from bodily demands is Prabhupada's mystical when he would travel throughout the world and throughout the globe, he would always, well, the globe is the world, same thing, but he would always follow his schedule. Do you know when, well, at least myself, I know when I travel to Mayapur, when I get to Mayapur, I'm like a vegetable. And I need about 3 days to kind of get myself together before I might do any teaching or anything, you know. So I always plan to get there 2 or 3 days before classes start when I go there to teach, because I know I won't be in a state. But Prabhupada never showed any signs or any symptoms of jet lag or anything, or any tiredness due to world travel. So that's, you could say, that would be a symptom that you could say that the Goswamis would also manifest if they happen to travel around the world. So Prabhupada, and then himself, even when he was residing in one place for some time, then he would sleep very little because he would be translating Bhagavatam. So interesting. All the stages, these are symptomatic of Prabhupada's absorption in Krishna and serving his spiritual master. All right, so we're going to hear about that now. Let's see what Maharaj explains. So page 617. So I think just me and Chandravali have the book.
Kumari Priya's got the book. I don't know whether she's working.
She might be working. Anyway, you're welcome to raise your hand if you'd like to read Kumari Priya, but perhaps we'll begin with Chandravali. Ravi, you can begin, page 617. I hope that little synopsis of what we covered last week has been a bit of a reminder, and we can continue.
Okay, the material energy is an unlimited storehouse of illusions, and these are largely connected to the material body, as it is a most suitable vehicle for illusory energy to fulfill its purposes. A further bodily illusion is the urge to sleep. Srila Prabhupada would say, sleep is death. However, intense attachment to Krishna overcomes this bodily function, which generally drags a person into ignorance. Arjun is an example of a devotee who had overcome the urge to eat and sleep by unceasing remembrance of Krishna. For this reason, Krishna calls him Gudakesha, one who has conquered sleep.
Yeah,
Even
just a side point on that. I heard it described one time that Arjuna was so enthusiastic that he would practice his bowmanship at night. So he would stalk the forest at night, and just by sound of animals, he would shoot his arrows. So that was Arjuna's enthusiasm for his bowmanship. So therefore, he's called Gudakesha. Go on, continue.
Even when asleep, an advanced devotee is never derelict in thinking Krishna's name, form, qualities, and pastimes. By such constant absorption in Krishna, a devotee connects with the internal potency by grace of which he conquers both sleep and ignorance. Srila Prabhupada says, this is called Krishna consciousness or samadhi. In addition to false bodily identification and ignorance, 3 other kinds of illusion are primary causes of material bondage. attachment, hatred, and pride. Krishna says that these and all other kinds of illusion are no longer known to the devotee in trance. To Uddhava, the Lord explains, Yoganam Atma Samrodha. Among the 8 progressive states of yoga, I am the final state, Samadhi, in which the soul is completely separated from illusion. The final characteristic of illusion and bodily identity is the influence of mode of nature. Devotees are often curious. Is an advanced sadhaka, such a devotee, at the stage of Samadhi, a transcendentalist? The short answer is no, but neither is he a victim of the modes of nature. An advanced devotee is completely free of ignorance and passion. That has already been explained. And yet the mode of goodness endures until a devotee attains bhav, of which a sadhaka situated in samadhi falls short. And yet we have clear scriptural statements that a devotee surrendered to Krishna, one fully engaged in undeviating devotion, is above the modes of nature. For example, Krishna tells Uddhava, Nirgunam Mad Apasarya. A worker who has taken shelter of me is understood to be transcendental to the modes of nature. And to Arjuna, the Lord speaks this well-known verse. One who engages in full devotional service, unfailing in all circumstances, at once transcends the modes of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman. These references clearly indicate that the devotee fully immersed in trance is transcendental to the modes of nature, even if he has not attained full liberation at bhav. This interesting dichotomy can be explained in the following ways. An accomplished practitioner fully absorbed in senses, in Krishna's name, form, pastime, and so on, by so doing, the Lord's transcendental qualities are the objects of his gross and subtle senses, and so his body and mind transcends the influence of the modes, even of goodness. In that sense, he is transcendental, or as we have explained earlier, he is spiritualized. However, when the sadhaka comes out of his trance of devotion and goes about activities like eating and bodily maintenance, his senses contact mundane sense objects and take on their qualities. Since an advanced devotee will associate with things in the modes of goodness, he adopts that mode. So in this sense, the practitioner is conditioned. In other words, while the sadhaka is engaged in trance, he is transcendental. But when he is not in trance, he is in the mode of goodness. From this, we conclude that a practitioner who attains samadhi has both a transcendental and a mundane disposition. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains this phenomenon in his commentary to a verse of Srimad Bhagavatam. That said, accomplished devotees who have strong attachment to the Lord remain absorbed in trance, even when not engaged in Nam Sankirtan. These devotees are of 2 types. Those who continue to actively remember Krishna and so do not relate well to practical duties, and those whose bhajans is so powerful that the momentum of their trance carries them through practical day-to-day dealings.
All right. Any curiosities there or questions there? Am I just making a distinction between interesting that someone at the stage of samadhi is not necessarily at the stage of bhava. Okay, but as we're hearing about the stage of samadhi, this is symptomatic of developed smaran, on Krishna. Yeah. But they are, and they, you know, they are they do explain it. I'm trying to understand this myself. There's two types. When they're engaged in their actual bhajan, then they are described here. They are transcendental. But that's just during the activities of bhajan. But when they're going about their practical activities, yeah, that will manifest as a mode of sattva. You know, yeah, I just thought it was interesting how it's such a person is not. I thought this was simple with Baba, but it's not. They still have to, because Baba is when Lord Grace comes from. So obviously, this person is qualified for attaining Baba. You know, like that, Hare Krishna. And then Maharaj is giving, those who continue to actively remember Krishna and do not relate well to practical duties. Yeah, sometimes devotees or perhaps, or some you see devotees are quite influenced, or they might not dress themselves properly. They may, they may be what we call spaced out to one degree or another. And then they get given the terms avaduta. It means they don't do things properly. They don't do things by the general rules. But that's but it may be they're just in a mode of ignorance. It may not be symptomatic of being avaduta. Actually, avaduta is the jewel of the Paramahamsas. It's the highest stage of spiritual realization. Avaduta, So sometimes when devotees may be spaced out, at least we used to call them avaduta. It might just because one is influenced by the lower modes of nature. Anyway, I'm just speaking here, those who continue to actively remember Krishna and do not relate well to practical duties. Actually, we see this, isn't it? We see some of our reverent, advanced spiritual masters or senior devotees. Some of them do not relate well to practical duties. Anyone seen that or experienced that? Due to their absorption in Krishna consciousness, they actually manifest quite sometimes an alarming aloofness. I've seen that. I'm saying this in glorification. One of them is Kavi Chandra Maharaj. I don't know if anyone's, because he used to stay in Brahmachari ashram, so he's completely the way he interacts, the way he interacts, the way he deals with the practical things is complete. He actually has to have someone to manage him. He's so aloof, But there again, you've got other devotees are very advanced in their Krishna consciousness, and they're very much attuned to their situation. And their living environment, and everything has to be. I could say like my spiritual master himself, his environment is perfect. He has such high. He's very attentive to everything about him, and make sure everything is clean and in place. Everything, but other devotees, they have a different mood. And I would say that sometimes they don't relate. Prabhupada was someone who did relate very well to the practical world, very much so. Prabhupada was very in tune with everything in all circumstances. Prabhupada was very together that way. He did not exhibit this other mood of this level of samadhi. Yeah. Another one as well, we don't see him much because I think his absorption in his smaran, he He got certain restrictions put on him. You don't know who that is I'm speaking about.
Madhav Maharaj, Tulsi.
Madhav Maharaj, yeah. He's completely immersed in his bhajan to the point of not being in tune with his surroundings so much. I remember one time I was doing a bit of a preaching tour with Golda Krishna Prabhu. We was traveling up Liverpool and places like that. We gave a lecture in Liverpool, the hideout center. And towards the end, I asked who's been here before, and one person had come once before, and he come when Madhav Maharaj came. He gave a lecture there. And this is the type of lecture you give to people coming for the first time. It's like outreach. And he explained to me someone who came to give a lecture, one of your seniors, and I understood. And he's explained, I couldn't figure out who it was. So I asked about the lecture. He said, well, he kept on speaking about this tree.
Tulsi.
Speaking about this tree, he was speaking about Tulsi. And he was advising them to stay up. He said, he's speaking about this Tulsi, and then he said we should stay up all night or something. This is Madhav Maharaj. It must be Madhav Maharaj. So completely, So if you meet him today, even if you met him and you spoke of him, then he probably wouldn't recognize you. So, but I see that. I see his manifest symptoms as being a glorification of his Krishna consciousness that even devotees can't relate to. One time he stayed in, when he was touring in the UK here, he stayed in this, this house they have connected to the manor for like students who go to college, because no other place would put him up. So he stayed there. And he had them staying up all night for Ekadashi. And all the students had to go to university the next day. So then he was banned from staying there. Anyway, let's not go on. But, you get the idea. So we're going to see that. We're going to see some devotees who are not. So we have to be educated. We shouldn't be critical, It's someone's not in knowledge or may kind of see it in a very critical way. But we're going to see that sometimes. Some devotees will be very unworldly and not relate. What page are we on, please? Kumari Priya's asking. We're on page 619. Yeah. But then again, But some others, their bhajan is so powerful that the momentum of their trance carries them through practical day-to-day dealings. And that's Srila Prabhupada. Yeah. And other senior devotees who are very much in tune with the world. Yeah. So that's generally the best one for preaching. You have to somewhat be in tune with the world and how to relate to people and what to say to them in order for them to inspire them at their particular level. But it's a big subject. I mean, seeing such ecstatic devotees, no doubt, gives one great benefit. Yeah, another thing of Madhav Maharaj as well. We had to take him to the airport, and it was me who was taking him to the airport, and there was only one vehicle, and that was the very stinking vegetable van that we used to pick up vegetables with, which was broken down and stunk of rotten vegetables. And I really didn't want to take him in that van. I thought, I can't. And Gora Kishore, actually, I was running. She said, he said, don't worry, he won't even notice the van he's in. He won't even notice. So I thought, okay, I'll take your word for it. Sure enough, he got in the van, and from the time he sat in the seat to the time he got to the airport, he was completely absorbed in the ecstasy of telling us about the glories of Tulsi and devotional service. He didn't even notice the van he was in. Where other spiritual masters, I mean, for instance, my spiritual master. Yeah. Sorry?
I was just thinking about Mother. Maharaj, one morning I went up to do my Tulsi Seva, and he was sleeping in Tulsi house.
Yeah.
He was sleeping there.
Suddenly, Kerala, best place to sleep on the Tulsi. Yeah, for example. Yeah, so these are symptoms of being completely absorbed, you know, completely absorbed in one's devotional bhajan. Yeah. And the pinnacle of that is Lord Rishabdev. Another pinnacle of that is Vamsidas Babaji. We read about him completely here. Bhaktisiddhanta advised the young persons not to have his association because they would just get confused. Yeah. So this is samadhi stroke coming into bhava. All right. Anything on that? So otherwise we can move. Kaumudi Priya as a hand and continue reading. Yeah. So just keep this in mind that as we read about these symptoms, we're going to see them. You know, we should be able to observe them, especially in a senior in a respective senior devotees. You're going to see these symptoms. You know? The external symptoms of their internal absorption in Krishna. Okay, Kaumudi Priya, would you like to continue reading?
Hare Krishna, yes, sure.
Hare Krishna.
Can I just ask which paragraph you're on?
Yeah,
Sorry,
we're on page 619 at the bottom, beginning with Chakravarti Thakur.
Okay. Thank you. Chakravarti Thakur points out what the extent to which a devotee is absorbed in trance. To that degree, his body and mind are transcendental, the balance remaining material. But then the devotee attains prema, the material aspect of his body disappears, and he becomes fully transcendental, not spiritualized, but spiritual. This proportional relationship between absorption in Bhajana and transcendence is revealed in the following words of Sri Kavi.
Just read the translation of it.
Devotion, direct experience of Supreme Lord, and detachment from other things, those three occur simultaneously for one who has taken shelter of a Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the same way, what pleasure, nourishment, and relief from hunger come simultaneously and increasingly with each bite for a person engaged in eating. To further respond to the earlier question, in the time when a devotee is in trance, he is transcendentally situated, and in the time when he is otherwise engaged, he remains above the modes to the degree what he retains his absorption of trance. A sadhaka's transcendence is based on his connection with the transcendental, not with his own liberated condition. This is the way references to the practitioner being above the modes should be understood. This understanding applies to other stages of smarana dasha, indeed to any stage of pure devotion. By deep absorption, a devotee, even at the beginning stage of sadhana, can experience occasional freedom from the modes. How the sadhaka enjoys the state of liberation at the stage of trance is praised in this way. The stage in which the consciousness of the living entity is attracted by the three modes of material nature is called conditioned life. But when that same consciousness is attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one is situated in a consciousness of liberation. This concludes, albeit at length, the quality of a devotee's freedom from the influence of material body. The next attribute of a devotee in trance is how he is free from bad habits, karma.
Okay, well, that's one. Now you can describe something else. It's a nice explanation. How freedom from the influence into body. So now it's going to be more subtle, yeah? The bad habits and anarthas is going to be described. Yes, can carry on. Yeah.
Bad habits, anarthas, that result from a past karma, are completely washed away for a devotee who is constantly engrossed in thoughts of Krishna. He is not only free of karma an attainment reached with a steady recollection, but of all impressions and effects of karma. He does not even remember them. Yet there are other anarthas what are more pervasive than those resulting from past pious or sinful acts. Thus are obstructive habits what result from offenses to the holy name. Since the means of success for a devotee is a quality of his nama bhajana, thus activities which offend the holy name are clearly counterproductive. Indeed, when a holy name is offended, the devotee is faced with resilient reactions. Remembrance effectively purifies those offenses, and the stages of smarana dasha systematically clear them from the heart. By the time a devotee reaches samadhi, the effect of such offenses in bhajana is minimal. Yet they can be discerned by how quickly the Lord's grace is achieved.
Okay, let's just pause there. Any questions about that? Just be clear, we'll know where we're going here. So free from karma. So karma is the very, in other words, is the sense of, our sense of personality in relationship to our material body. Yeah. And the very characteristics that come by dint of our karma from previous lives, going back millions and millions of years. Yeah. One is free from that, which is pretty significant. Yeah. Just like you see that young children, it's not long before they develop, or it's not, they actually, right from the very beginning, they exhibit particular characteristics because it's their karma. Yeah. So at this stage, one is all this is washed away, it's described, yeah. But what remains here is describing about, again, the offenses to the holy name. But it does become cleared. So let's take note of that. It does become cleared. Any questions on that, or we can just continue. So remembrance effectively purifies these offenses. Yeah, often devotees, there's one devotee staying in the ash, staying with us at the moment, a young devotee, and he has kind of quite a healthy, in one sense, a bit, perhaps he's really concerned about offenses. He's really concerned about it, making offenses or the offenses that he may have made. And yeah, but actually okay, no doubt we've all made offenses. It's just, unfortunately, that's the stock that we come from. So, but by remembering Krishna, chanting the holy name, then we can clear the effects of those offenses. Okay, can continue up. Let's any questions or comments on that. So now we're going to speak about fearlessness. Yeah, you can continue.
Another symptom of samadhi is fearlessness. The yogis who are in trance in remote places, like a heart of a jungle or a cave of a mountain, are easy prey for wild animals or snakes. Yet they are so absorbed in meditation that they are unaware of external circumstances. Their faith is in Krishna, who controls the activities of all living things, wild or good-natured. And because of their strong faith, they have nothing to fear. The same may be said of devotees relishing the trance of Nama Bhajana, like Haridasa Thakur, who shared a cave with a poisonous snake. They have given themselves to Krishna. It's now up to him whether they live or die. They are fearless. The Srimad Bhagavatam says, fear arises when a living entity misidentifies himself as material body because of absorption in the external illusionary energy of the Lord. A devotee in samadhi has no attachment to or identification with either his body or mind, and he is free from influence of the modes. How then can fear enter his heart? And because he is always absorbed in Krishna, he partakes of Krishna's quality of fearlessness. his Abhaya Charana. Prabodhananda Saraswati describes the fearless sadhaka in this way. A devotee relishing the mellows of samadhi in a land of Raja neither suffers from impious or pious deeds, nor does he tremble in fear of his body's demise due to the snake of a time. He is not interested in opulences of Brahma or other demigods, and he has no inclination to taste the eternal bliss of impersonal Brahman. The aforementioned...
Yeah, just is there any trying to think of some anyone. I'm sure most of you read the book by Radhanath Swami Maharaj, The Journey Home, and I found it interesting in how he was taught by different tapasvis and yogis he met, this developing faith in destiny, or faith and therefore freedom from fear of wild animals, because he was meditating in the jungles of the Himalayas. So he describes there how he would practice that. In other words, but he would do it as a practice, at least at that stage. Yeah. Anyway, I was just remembering that free of fear. I'm just thinking, like, would I guess we wouldn't, but someone who's free of fear, would you go into a lion's den and chant your rounds with faith that Krishna is in the heart within the lion, and if the lion wishes to eat me, then it's Krishna's wish, and but Krishna will protect me. It's quite high, quite intense, not intense, but quite a high degree of faith in Krishna. Yeah.
We have two examples. I was thinking of Raghunath Das Goswami, when he's doing bhajan and that lion's tiger sitting.
Yeah, yeah.
And then also when he's doing bhajans in the heat and Radharani has to come and put a veil over his head.
Yeah, these are all these are kind of symptoms again of samadhi, and I think it was I think the story goes where Krishna manifest, and he told the lion, or then the lion went in another direction because Krishna came. And I think Sanatana Goswami happened to see that.
Yeah.
And he became concerned because of his absorption. Then Chandravali gave the example of Radharani as well, that he was causing Radha and Krishna to engage in his service. Anyway, so it's at that point that Sanatana Goswami introduced the concept of bhajan kotir, where he had bhajan, little huts made, so that the devotees could do their bhajan and not kind of, for instance, be out of the shelter of the sun, be away from preying animals, and not force Krishna or Radharani to interrupt their loving pastimes. But yeah, I mean, in this world, there's lots of fears, isn't there? Prabhupada was listening to Prabhupada one lecture, he was describing about animals are naturally fearful, isn't it? Pigeons, they're fearful. They can look left, look right. When is death coming? When is death coming? Deer, etc. All animals, they're full of fear. Foxes and things like that. Fear, when is death coming? And also it manifests in the human form, like fear of what's going to happen in the future. What will, what if this happens? What if that happens? What if I lose my job? What if I lose my house? What if this? What if that? Is apprehension and there's fear. But being absorbed in Krishna, one is free of fear. Complete faith in Krishna. Let's have a look how many more pages there in this chapter. Oh, a few more pages. Yeah, where was we reading to? Perhaps I can have a read.
The aforementioned characteristics of trance.
Yeah, you could just continue right off this page and that. Go on, carry on. Yeah.
The aforementioned characteristics of trance may be said to be its marginal features, tatashta lakshana. Its principal attribute, svarupa lakshana, is interest in anything other than thoughts of Krishna, the pastimes of Krishna, and chanting the names of Krishna. Jiva Goswami gives the sage Markandeya as example of a devotee who is so absorbed in trance that he has no awareness of what is happening around him. Even when Lord Shiva and his wife appear in person, because Markandeya's material mind had stopped functioning, the sage failed to notice that Lord Shiva and his wife, the controllers of the universe, had personally come to see him. Markandeya was so absorbed in meditation that he was not aware of either himself or the external world. An advanced devotee's obsession with Krishna is obvious in his dealings. He's always talking about Krishna, whether asked to or not. As a preacher, such a devotee is willing to take any risk to give others the holy name, because to him what is the only thing of value or importance in a universe. Absorption in Krishna is spontaneous and effortless. Therefore, sometimes such a devotee becomes distracted from his preaching, his household affairs or work, and returns to thoughts of Lord's pastimes, which is his default mode. A devotee whose attachment to Krishna has just matured will be new to the current of devotion, sweeping his heart downstream towards a cascading waterfall of ecstasy. As a novice,
just listen to that sentence, sorry. A devotee whose attachment to Krishna has just matured will be new to the current of devotion, sweeping his heart downstream towards a cascading waterfall of ecstasy. Sounds very attractive. Yeah, carry on, Mother.
As a novice in managing external symptoms of devotion, he may sometimes startle observers with his behavior, giving them an impression of being a daydreamer or even mentally disturbed. Ignorant people will be apologetic, offenders will call him a Sahajiya, but learned Vaishnavas will know that he has fallen into celestial river of trance, relishing a sweet nectar of attachment to Krishna's pastimes. This wonderful state of devotion brings along with it one extraordinary quality. It qualifies the devotee to see Krishna. That qualification is not like access to pastimes of a Premi Bhakta or the occasional vision of Bhava Bhakta, but its eligibility brought about by intense attachment nonetheless. Readers may question, how does practitioner have a qualification to see Krishna? Answer is, sadhana bhakti captivates Krishna and also controls him. Therefore, if a sadhaka's desire is strong enough, it's not impossible for him to see Krishna.
All right, Hare Krishna. Sounds inspiring? Yes, Hare Krishna. Yeah, so what I was just explaining, Marge has explained this here, that sometimes his behavior may startle observers with his behavior, giving them the impression of being a daydreamer, or even mentally disturbed. Yeah. All right, carry on reading a bit. Of course, this control is not the control that loving devotion exerts over the Lord. Okay. Remember, the stage of prema is where one controls the Lord. Yeah. So those, yeah. So even a sadhaka is not the stage of bhava. They by this absorption in smaran, I would think that when they do see Krishna, they probably quickly manifest the stage of bhava. It's not impossible for him to see Krishna. Stage was interesting. Of course, this control is not the control that loving devotion exerts over the Lord, but it is control nonetheless. Were that not the case, Krishna will not make attachment a condition for awarding love, a topic we have already discussed. How Krishna is controlled by sadhana is explained in the following verse. My dear Uddhava, the unalloyed devotional service rendered to me by my devotees brings me under their control. I cannot thus be controlled by those engaged in mystic yoga, Shankar philosophy, pious work, Vedic study, austerity, or renunciation. Yes. With the use of the word satyati, Krishna clearly says that bhakti brings him under its control. But this is not the same control, for instance, that Radharani has over Krishna. It's not the same control that Mother Yasoda has over Krishna. But still, Krishna becomes attracted to this absorption of his bhakta. But it's not the same as the perfected souls. Yeah. Yes. Does bhakti here refer to practice or perfection? Jiva Goswami argues that because bhakti is contrasted with other sadhanas like yoga and sankhya, Krishna must be speaking of sadhana bhakti. Yeah, I'm just trying to learn this verse at the moment. I never thought of it from that perspective. The unalloyed devotional service rendered to me by my devotee brings me under their control. So this is sadhana. Yeah. The rule is that like must be contrasted with like. So when this verse speaks of bhakti, it speaks of sadhana bhakti, the means to control Krishna at any stage of his practice, or to speak of as its culmination, trance. Another approach to this verse accepts that devotional service, given that Krishna is controlled by satya bhakti, that's perfection, but because sadhana bhakti gradually leads a devotee to the perfectional stage, logic demands that it too is part of the glorification in this verse. We are again led to conclude that the word bhakti also refers to sadhana, which even with all a sadhaka's imperfections, somehow controls the supreme controller. Because Krishna is so captivated and controlled by sadhana, the advanced devotee in trance is eminently qualified to see Krishna. Whether Krishna shows himself or not is another thing. Yeah. I'm tempted to tell a story here, which is a bit, I guess it's I don't know if it's confidential.
No, tell us. You
Okay.
start. Tell us.
There's a story of one Mataji she's passed away. This is in Hungary, in New Vrajdan. Name is Radhakund Mataji, I think that. Yeah. I just remember that just now. And she was chanting. And she was in great anxiety, and she was quite tearful because she just heard a lecture about the offenses. And she was kind of chanting in this mood of being really upset that she couldn't stop making offenses. But she was chanting and saying, but she was in this mood. She was in this somber mood of, being very upset about chanting, and so she didn't know, and making offenses, because I think the class described that how it's like throwing ashes on Krishna. So she took it really seriously. And as she reveals in her diary, which she used to keep, and the title of this entry in her diary is "Everything Changed from This Point." So if you haven't heard this, get ready. Krishna came to her during the japa period, and he put his arm around her and he was pacifying her. And she described Krishna in a very emotional way. And she became, no one else could see Krishna, but it wasn't in her meditation. It was Shakshat Darshan. Krishna came before her. And she described how she got the impression he had just come from herding cows because there was dust in Krishna's hair. And she described a beautiful description of Krishna. And I forget the other details, and from that point on, she was absorbed in, okay, that's why I say from that point on, she was completely obsessed with and absorbed in Krishna from that visit that she had with Krishna. That's during her japa. All right, I just told you something which is not predictable. It's no Hare Krishna. So that's an example. You could say of that, someone who's that a sadhaka coming to the realms, I would say, of Baba, you know. You like that story? It's true. Hare Krishna. All right, let's read on. Let's not get too excited. Quick, let's read on. So the example of a devotee who did see the Lord in his samadhi is Lord Brahma. He underwent severe penance, so while in trance, he was not only able to see the Lord, but was touched by him and received spiritual guidance. And yet meeting Krishna in trance is not a given. It is a possibility. When Gopakumar was in Tapaloka, the sage Pipalayana taught the boy the art of meditation. Do you remember that section we read?
Yeah.
In Brihat Bhagavatamrita, the whole discussion on what's best, meditation or actual service, like that, the whole discussion. While speaking on how Krishna reveals himself, the sage mentions the word kadachit, which means sometimes. This indicates that sometimes a bhakti yogi gets to see the Lord. But this is not the stage of prema bhakta. Yeah. An example being Narada in his last life, but sometimes means that it is an occasional event to which only some are privy. The sage's actual words were, and translation to the verse, quote, if the Lord, out of compassion for his devotees, sometimes reveals himself to their eyes, that vision actually occurs by the power of the mind. One only imagines the eyes to be the seers. Oh, right. So I don't quite understand that, but let's read on. In giving example of a practitioner's trance, Jiva Goswami cites the order the sage Narada gives Vyas. Narada instructs his disciple to repeatedly observe the pastimes of Krishna in samadhi. Okay. And then record what he has seen. So that's there in chapter 7 of the first canto. The son of grown are punished. There's Srila Vyasadeva in trance. Series of very important verses. You can think of the pastimes of the Lord in trance for the liberation of the people in general from all material bondage. These are examples in which a devotee can sometimes see the Lord in samadhi. And while a devotee who is so attracted to Krishna is always eager to see his worshipful Lord, if he does not see Krishna in sadhana, he will certainly see him in prema. The hankering for a darshan will simply hone his love for Krishna and make vision of the Lord all the more relishable when it finally takes place. Devotees sometimes wonder, does a sadhaka see Krishna with his eyes? All right. So I just explained that, at least from my understanding, this Mataji Radhakun, she did see that. But let's see, I'm probably wrong. Let's read it. In the realm of bhakti, such things are always possible. But if the lesser vision within the mind is not assured, the greater vision with the eyes is at least uncertain. Kadama Muni saw the Lord before him riding on Garuda and surrounded by confidential associates. And after King Muchukunda awakened from a long sleep, he also saw Krishna in a four-armed form. As mentioned in its own way, sadhana bhakti captivates and controls Krishna. If a sadhaka has performed the kind of service and sadhana that truly captures Krishna's heart, then the Lord may be inclined to fulfill his devotee's inner desire and give his darshan. Who or what can obstruct Krishna from doing what he wants? And while yogis also attain samadhi, they do so with great difficulty and with a realization that depends upon their aspiration. For the most part, yogis will fall away from their sadhana. By comparison, accomplished devotees will rarely, if ever, do so. This feature of bhakti samadhi this feature of bhakti samadhi now follows. Any questions or comments here?
I just wondered, did
Yeah.
you find out about Radha Kund Mataji while she was still alive, or was it discovered after she passed away?
No, my Guru Maharaj told her not to tell anyone.
So she approached your Guru Maharaj, and so he knew, but no
Yeah,
one else knew.
Yeah, and then he gave her further instructions on her development of spontaneous love for Krishna during her last days. But he told not to tell anyone. And after she left, then it was made known. And there's a book that is written in Hungarian. There's her diary is in Hungarian, and I got a translation of some of it. So yeah, so it wasn't known. Obviously, that was because it would attract too much attention.
Yeah.
But it was very hard. But she was in this. You can read it when you read it. Yeah, she was very much in a great ecstasy after that. Yeah, I'm sure there is devotees who, even in contemporary times, who Krishna has appeared to, but they're not going to tell anyone.
Yes, as I know that there are people, they know Krishna, but they will not tell anyone. And if they do, they very quickly die.
Really? You heard that, yeah? So there's a warning. Is that sastrically? You know that?
One person, yeah, we were, I've just heard about him. He said that don't tell everyone, otherwise I can die. Because then when people will start surrounding him, and he would lose his purity or something he was worried about.
Right. Yeah. Also, there is, remember when Lord Chaitanya appeared to this Brahmin who was trying to offer bhoga to the Lord, and Lord Chaitanya kept coming and stealing the bhoga every time we'd make the offering. And then eventually he revealed himself as Krishna because he was chanting the Gopal mantra. So this Brahmin saw Lord Chaitanya manifest as Krishna. And then Lord Chaitanya warned him not to reveal this pastime between us until after I have left. Otherwise, you will quickly you will come to your early demise. But I don't think. I mean, that might be a specific. But I don't think it's there in Shastra. If we reveal, anyway, let's just take another example. Is Madhavendra Puri, where the Lord didn't appear to him, but the Lord arranged that he hid the sweet rice for him. So Madhavendra Puri is very concerned about the attraction or the adoration that would come from that. So he left the place. But anyway, back to the point. I don't think it's a speculation, but I think there's probably are devotees where the Lord has appeared to them. Some in dreams, that's perhaps more common. But then there's Shakshat Darshan, where the Lord actually, like he appeared to this Radha Kund Mataji. It's a tantalizing subject. So why does he do it? Because he's pleased with our service. Yeah. He's pleased with our service. So this is service that's continued, thick or thin. Yeah, despite all the impediments, despite all the setbacks, one continues rendering service to Krishna, one continues chanting the holy name. Yeah. So in that sense, even the practice of sadhana invokes, or can to some degree, Krishna becomes tempted to appear. But it's not, it is his Krishna's free will. He may or may not. It's not mechanical. So, but still, devotees eventually, even if they don't have a vision of Krishna or Krishna doesn't appear, every devotee will at some point see Krishna. Yeah? See Radha Krishna. That's the perfection of our devotional practice. Yeah? That's what we're aiming for, isn't it? That's what we're hoping for. But we just don't, not that we're just satisfied with seeing Krishna. We're more concerned with serving him. So we should keep that in mind as well. We are happy to serve Krishna. And if he sees fit to reveal himself, wonderful. And if he doesn't, we'll still continue to serve him. But then we will receive him in his holy name. Krishna will manifest in our hearts. Like that. And so Krishna's going to manifest on Thursday. Is Janmashtami. All right, so let's pause there. Quite interesting, inspiring to read this. Any final comments? Just where do we leave off? Yeah. 626. So please join us if you can for Bhagavad Gita tomorrow on 6th chapter, and then we'll do that Tuesday and Wednesday, and then Thursday obviously we'll be otherwise busy, otherwise engaged in the wonderful festival of Janmashtami. Okay, so we have Bhagavatamrita. It'll be 2 weeks we've gone without it. And the next week we should get back on track. Okay, thank you everyone for listening in. Hope it was inspiring, interesting. I wish you all the best. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Mahaprabhu ki jai.
Hare Hare.